Okay, welcome to video number 2 for managerial accounting, the second video for chapter 22. We're going to talk about direct materials variances. I realized I had a typo in my last video. That might happen from time to time. I'll try my best to not do that, but it's at chapter 21 and chapter 22. So this one is chapter 22. We're going to talk about direct materials variances. Your book, it's page 1112 through 1114. And these are the headers in the ebook. And then I also, for this problem, have an example problem that I'm going to go through in this video. Okay, so direct materials variances. Remember, we just talked about in the last video that this consists of my price variance as well as my quantity variance. But I can also just find a total variance. And we did that in the last budget that we looked at when we took our actual costs minus our standard costs in total to find the total cost variance. Well, you can do this individually just by direct materials as well. So if you can see on the top of page 1113, you see the actual cost for this. This is the Gene Company still, $40,150, and the standard cost was $37,500. So the total direct materials cost variance in total is $2,650. Now that's the overall variance. That's the total direct materials variance. But we will also break this down into two variances, price and quantity variance, that gives us more details. But those two will net to the same as the total variance in the end. So total direct materials variance, actual direct materials cost minus my standard direct materials cost. Excuse me. The actual direct materials cost is figured by taking my actual price times my actual quantity. And my standard direct materials cost is found by taking my standard price times my standard quantity. And then I've shown what my abbreviations are here, because typically in this chapter I use the abbreviated version just so I don't have to type out quite so much. But it's, I think, fairly self-explanatory. AQ is actual quantity, AP is actual price, SQ is standard quantity, and SP is standard price. So those are the different variables. So that's the overall one, and that one is kind of a repeat from what we said before. So I'm going to move on from that at this point to talk about the kind of the more detailed one. So the first one we looked at here is the direct materials price variance. The direct materials price variance is actual price minus standard price times actual quantity. So what we're looking for here is, what did I anticipate my materials costing me, and what did I actually spend on it? But notice I'm taking it times actual quantity, because remember, I'm making this a flexible budget and basing it off of the volume that was actually done in order to find my variance. So for example, in the book, for this particular example, the jeans, they had an actual price. They anticipated paying $5 per square yard for their jeans, while what they actually paid, so their standard price in this case, in the example in the book, would be $5, and their actual price was $5.50. So that would be my actual price I'd subtract from my standard price. And then I'd multiply that by actual quantity. It goes on to say that the actual quantity used for the jeans, and this would be the actual quantity used, this would be usually a given number. In some way you'd be able to either find it or be a given number. And it gives us that the actual quantity used was 7,300 yards. So as it shows in the book, I can take the $5.50, the actual price, minus the standard price of $5, to get the actual quantity, 7,300 square yards, to get a $3,650 unfavorable variance. How do I know it's unfavorable? For one thing, if you keep these in order, I mentioned this in the last video, a positive number will always be unfavorable and a negative number will always be favorable. But I think the easier method is just to kind of logic your way through it and look at what it actually is. So I thought I was going to spend $5 on this. That was what I went into my budget thinking. What I actually spent is $5.50. Is it a good or a bad thing that I spent more money than what I anticipated? And the answer in business is a bad thing, right? Spending $5.50 rather than $5, which is what makes this an unfavorable variance. I spent more than I anticipated per square yard for my fabric. So the next one is my direct materials quantity variance. The formula for that is the actual quantity minus the standard quantity times the standard price. So for this one, I'm looking at what did I pay per square yard and how much of the variance is made up of that. For this one, I'm looking at how efficient I was at using the, in this case, material Well, I shouldn't say that 'cause it's direct materials, but in this case, we're talking about the square yardage of jean material. Did I use as much as I thought? Because a lot of times in the manufacturing process, there can be waste, there can be errors, there can be mistakes, there can be a lot of different reasons, but I might not use the quantity that I anticipated, and that's what this variance is there to show. So in this case, the standard quantity, which they would find by saying, okay, how many yards per unit should I have made, and multiplying the number of yards per unit times the pairs of jeans made. That would be the way to find that. In this case, that's 7,500 would be my standard quantity, and my actual quantity was a given number here, 7,300 square yards. And then multiply that by the standard price, which in this case is $5. Remember, we use the standard price, not the actual price. Standard price is $5 to get a $1,000 favorable variance. Effectively, what I'm saying is I used 200 less square yards, and based on the fact that I anticipated spending $5 per unit, I have a $1,000 favorable variance on that for my direct materials quantity variance. Now, if you notice, I have a $1,000 favorable variance, which is a negative number for my direct materials quantity variance. And I have a $3,650 unfavorable variance for my direct materials price variance in this case. If I net those two together, I get 2,650, which, if you go all the way back up to the top of the page, 1,113, you see that is the total variance we found in the first place. So this will always total up to the total variance, which is a good way to check your work. But this gives you more detail about where the variance actually came from, what caused it, what was the issue. In this case, obviously, we did well on our quantity, and we did not do so well on our price. So our issue here is the amount that we're buying our product for, rather than the amount that we're using. Okay, so we were efficient with our use, we were inefficient with our purchasing price. Or ineffective, probably is a better term. So now I want to look at a problem in the back of the chapter on page 1138. I want to look at brief exercise 22-1. Now, for this to be more like class, what I'd recommend, although obviously it's a video, so it's up to you. What I'd recommend is pausing the video here and trying to work brief exercise or basic exercise 22-1 on page 1138 on your own, and then starting the video to see how I do it or how it's done, and to confirm that your answer is right. So now would be the time to pause if you want to. Okay, so basic exercise 22-1 says Bellingham Company produces a product that requires 2.5 standard pounds per unit. So that's my standard quantity. So I want to make sure that when I say that, my standard quantity per unit is 2.5 pounds. 0.5 pounds. That's the standard quantity per unit. Okay, and then it says the standard price is $3.75 per pound. So standard price 3.75 per pound. And then it goes on to say if 15,000 units use 36,000 pounds, so 15,000 units, my units manufactured. My actual quantity, but this would be a total quantity, not a per unit quantity, is 36,000. And the actual price is $4 per pound. This says that's what they bought it for. Asking first just to find the price variance. My price variance, my direct materials price variance, is actual price minus standard price times actual quantity. So my actual price in this case is the $4. So direct materials price variance, I'm going to take my equals $4 minus my standard price, which was $375, times my actual quantity, which was 36,000. That gives me a $9,000 variance. Now, since I put this in the correct order, that is going to be, it's a positive number, so it's an unfavorable variance. But it should be pretty obvious that's the case because I anticipated spending $3.75 per pound and I spent $4 per pound. So again, it makes sense to me, at least, hopefully to you as well, that I spent more money than I thought, and that's not a good thing, therefore it is an unfavorable variance. So now onto my direct materials quantity variance. So now I need to take my actual quantity minus my standard quantity times my standard price. Now, one of these is pretty easy. I've got my, sorry if I didn't type those, I hate that. I've got my actual quantity, that's 36,000, right? But do I have a standard quantity? Well, I have a standard quantity per unit, but I don't have it in total, so I can't just take 250 minus 36,000. I need to instead say, okay, $2.5 pounds per unit. I need to know how many units I made. Well, I made 15,000. So what is my standard in total? My standard quantity in total, which would be the 2.5 times the 15,000, because my standard was on a per unit basis 2.5 pounds, and I made 15,000 units. Therefore, my total standard quantity should be 2.5 times 15,000, which gives me 37,500. So now I have everything that I need to write my formula here. So now I have my my direct materials quantity. So it's actual quantity minus standard quantity. So actual quantity 36,000 minus standard quantity 37.5 times my standard price, which is 3.75. Gives me negative 5,625, and it is a favorable variance. And again, if you keep it in order, the negative number makes it a favorable variance all the time. But if you don't, or if you get things mixed up like I do from time to time, if you just look at the fact that I would have anticipated before I started this process using 37,500 pounds of direct materials on the 15,000 units that I actually manufactured, when in fact all I actually used was 36,000 pounds, which is a good thing, which makes that a favorable variance. So that's answers to A and B. C, as for the cost variance, I prefer to call this the total direct materials cost variance, which we could go back and redo, you know, the total standard and the total standard cost and the total actual cost and subtract the two. Or since we've done the detail already, we can simply add these two to get a total unfavorable variance of 3,375.